How they look determines their value.
It's true that to some extent, advertisers have always appealed to girls at this level.
Barbie, you're beautiful.
But there can be little doubt that something radically different has emerged over the past few years.
It's my scene, my bling, bling, bling.
The new My Scene, My Bling Bling girls are here. Nice bling. Here, wear my ring. Ooh, sparkly.
You see now dolls with highly sexualized outfits and themes marketed to 6-year-olds.
I go to visit preschools, and I'll see 4-year-old girls in what I often call crotch skirts, modeled after Bratz dolls.
That's so cute. I would seriously wear that. Thanks. Be Bratz. Viva.
While one part of you cognitively may be able to accept belly shirts when you're 7 years old, are you emotionally mature enough to handle the outcome when you go out in public and people look at you like, an underage Britney Spears?
And with boys, we see the same pattern. While to some degree marketers have long targeted boys with what would seem to be adult messages, messages that equate being a man with aggression and toughness and violence, today's boys are immersed in an altogether different world.
Fire! Exciting!
With boys, what we see is the use of images of violence, power, domination at very young ages.
With video games, for example, we went from 16-bit to 32-bit to 64-bit to 128-bit technology in about 5 years. What that means is that we're getting closer and closer to virtual reality.
The amount of violence, entertainment violence, that young children are exposed to is startling. They're getting a message that when you have conflicts, you fight with violence, that you have to fight in order to resolve your differences. That's what you do. And that watching violence is fun.
What the hell is this?
It's entertaining.
The Federal Trade Commission report that came out looking at the marketing of media to children showed that indeed the media industry was marketing material to children that even their own rating systems said were too young for that material.
The studios confirmed to Congress today that children as young as 9 years old were tested for their reactions to R-rated violent movies.
Clearly, there were times during the period discussed in the FTC report when we allowed competitive zeal to overwhelm sound judgment and appropriate standards.
So the very people who are making the product are telling you what's appropriate for kids. And there has been a shift in the space of a decade of one full ratings point. So what was an R-rated movie is now a PG-13. They don't use child development experts in deciding this, and the questions they ask are not, is this okay for kids? It is, would parents let kids of a certain age watch this?
I still masturbate to Pam.
Greg?
Look at those boobs. Man, I just want to lather them up with soap and just...
One thing that happened when the movie studios tightened up on letting kids into R movies was that the sexual content, drug content, alcohol, tobacco, profanity, adult content migrated into the PG-13 movies. So they're a lot more like what R movies used to be.
And a Hollywood movie that's rated for older viewers, PG-13 or R, has a whole line of toys and products marketed to children 3, 4, and 5 years old.
New Itsy Bitsy Spider-Man.
Despite growing concerns about the industry's explicit strategy of age compression, its drive to reach kids at younger and younger ages has only accelerated. The result is a massive and growing toddler industry that almost from the womb now blankets babies in brands.
It's really hard to find baby paraphernalia that's not plastered with media characters. You can find unbranded baby stuff, but you can find it in high-end toy stores. But if you go to places where poor middle-class families shop, it's all branded. So the babies start out life with the notion of consumption. And that's not an accident. What they want is cradle-to-grave brand loyalty. That's what they talk about, share of mind. They talk about owning children for life.
Norman Feeney, Pepsi drinker for life.
There's been this recognition, apparently, that children as young as 6 months of age can recognize brands. So now, if they can recognize brands, we've got to make sure that they recognize our brand. The marketer is interested in getting to that child at the very, very beginning to begin to shape that child's worldview, to begin to shape that child's brand preferences, to begin to basically tell the child, in a sense, what that child needs in order to have a meaningful life. And that's where we see, as mothers, that's our job. It's not theirs.
Where to turn in such a world? Millions of parents are now finding some solace in what appears to be a counter-trend. It's a new media movement that claims to be good for infants. And whether we're talking about developmental DVDs like Baby Einstein and Brainy Baby, or 24-hour programming for infants and toddlers on TV, the idea is that good media is the best antidote to bad media.
We don't get to decide how tall they'll end up, or what their shoe size will be in 2 years. But how big their imaginations get?
Is that your shirt?
Well, we do have some say in that.
The idea is that our kids would be all right if parents would simply turn their children away from the commercial clutter and turn them on to educational media.
Because kids don't just grow up, they think up.
But the question is any of this even true?
There is not one iota of research evidence that shows that they teach children anything, or that the children who experience these things at early ages are any different in terms of their educational capacity or their fund of knowledge later on down the line. It is a huge, hundreds of millions of dollars a year business. And they're selling it to parents' insecurities.
You'll never get into college if you don't play your video game.
They're basically letting parents think that if they don't get these things, their children will be behind.
What will this home video end up being labeled? Kyle and Max in the car? No, Kyle and Max playing.
Cat, we want tea.
Make that Kyle and Max increasing the size of their brains.
The majority of parents think if they don't put their kids in front of media early and often, that they are going to be behind other kids.
And even as this industry has been making big educational claims, it's been making even bigger profits. Sales of infant videos and DVDs purporting to be educational are expected to reach $7.8 billion by 2010.
After her daughter was born, Julie Eigner Clark searched for ways to share her love of music and art with her child. So she borrowed some equipment and began filming children's videos in her basement. The Baby Einstein Company was born, and in just 5 years her business grew to more than $20 million in sales. Julie Eigner Clark.
This is a billion-dollar industry that is a complete and total scam. There's no evidence that a baby watching a DVD is learning anything.
Educational videos aimed at babies may not be such a bright idea after all. A new study found that children who watch popular DVDs like Baby Einstein and Brainy Baby actually have poorer vocabularies. One researcher even said she'd rather have babies watch American Idol.
The American Academy of Pediatrics has now for 7 years recommended that there be no screen media use for children under the age of 2. And this is for some very specific reasons. First of all, there is no solid scientific research evidence